10 abandoned amusement parks in Florida that Google Maps forgot. A man in a Florida swamp who built a rocket to the moon in 1969 and charged families $3 to watch it launch. A theme park that Walt Disney himself greenlit and then abandoned before a single guest ever walked through the gates. A hurricane that drowned an entire boardwalk in a single night, and the families who drove back the next morning to find nothing left but sand. In this video, we are counting down 10 abandoned amusement parks in Florida that Google Maps forgot. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and let us walk through the empty turnstiles. Number 10. Circus World, Polk County, Florida. Before Walt Disney World rewrote the rules of Florida tourism in 1971, the state's entertainment landscape was a patchwork of roadside attractions, family-owned parks, and regional spectacles that drew summer crowds on the strength of a single gimmick or a single charismatic founder. Circus World was built on a grander ambition than most. Opened in 1974 on a sprawling site in Polk County along the US 27 corridor, it was designed as a working circus theme park. Not a simulation of the circus, but the actual thing. There were live performances under a permanent big top, clown schools, trapeze acts, animal trainers, and a midway that stretched across 35 acres. At its peak, Circus World drew over 1 million visitors a year and employed hundreds of performers, many of them from the Ringling family's extended circus network, which had deep roots in nearby Sarasota. The park changed ownership twice in the 1980s, became boardwalk and baseball in 1987, attempted a pivot to a baseball-themed park built around the Kansas City Royals spring training facility, and then closed permanently in January 1990 after just 3 seasons, when the Royals moved their training operations elsewhere, and the park's economic foundation collapsed overnight. The site was cleared, developed, and redeveloped across the following decades. On Google Maps, you see a commercial corridor along US 27. There is no indication that 1 million people a year once came here to watch trapeze artists fly over their heads. Number 9. Pirates World, Dania Beach, Broward County. In the 1960s, before Disney and before the interstate highway system fully reorganized Florida tourism around Orlando, the Gold Coast counties of Broward and Miami-Dade had their own circuit of regional parks that served the families who came to the beach towns and stayed for a week. Pirates World opened in Dania Beach in 1967 on a 16-acre site just a few miles from Fort Lauderdale-Hollywood International Airport. It had a pirate theme built around a central lagoon, a wooden roller coaster called the Buccaneer, a log flume, a haunted house, a carousel, and a concert venue that, in its later years, hosted acts ranging from the Jackson 5 to Alice Cooper. The park was genuinely beloved by South Florida families for nearly a decade. Then Disney opened in 1971, and the gravitational pull of Orlando began draining attendance from every regional park in the state. Pirates World closed in 1975. The site was converted to a shopping center. The wooden roller coaster was demolished. The lagoon was filled. On Google Maps, you see a strip mall parking lot in Dania Beach. There is no marker, no plaque, no indication that teenagers once screamed their way through a wooden coaster on this exact piece of ground. Number 8. Miracle Strip Amusement Park, Panama City Beach, Bay County. The Florida Panhandle has always operated on a different tourism economy than the peninsula, closer to Alabama and Georgia than to Miami, drawing families from the Deep South on summer road trips, rather than international visitors flying into Orlando. Miracle Strip Amusement Park was the anchor of that economy in Panama City Beach for nearly 4 decades. It opened in 1963 along the Front Beach Road corridor and grew into a full-scale park with a wooden roller coaster called the Starliner, a dark ride called the Abominable Snowman, a haunted house, a log flume, and a midway that lit up the beach strip every summer night from Memorial Day to Labor Day. The Starliner was considered one of the finest wooden coasters in the American Southeast, drawing coaster enthusiasts from across the region who came specifically to ride it. The park closed in 2004 as rising property values along the beach corridor made the land worth more as condominiums than as a family amusement park. The Starliner was sold and relocated to a park in Indiana. The rest of the site was demolished and redeveloped. On Google Maps, you see a condominium complex and a parking structure on Front Beach Road. The Starliner's original footprint is underneath a foundation that has never acknowledged it was ever there. Number 7. Warm Mineral Springs Park, Northport, Sarasota County. This one is stranger than the others, and its strangeness is the point. Warm Mineral Springs is a natural geological formation, a deep circular sinkhole fed by a geothermal spring that maintains a constant temperature of 87 degrees year-round and contains the highest mineral content of any spring in the United States. Human remains found in the spring have been dated to over 10,000 years old, making it one of the most significant archaeological sites in North America. In the 1940s and 1950s, a developer named Bronson Hartley recognized the spring's therapeutic reputation and built a full resort and attraction around it. Bathhouses, a hotel, a diving platform, picnic grounds, and a promotional campaign that marketed the spring's waters as having near-miraculous healing properties. At its peak, Warm Mineral Springs drew thousands of visitors a week, many of them elderly tourists seeking relief from arthritis and joint pain, who would spend hours floating in the warm, sulfurous water. The resort went through a series of ownership changes, a period of county management, and a protracted legal and political dispute over development rights that has left the site in a state of suspended animation for years. The bathhouses are deteriorating. The hotel is gone. The spring itself is still there, still warm, still archaeologically extraordinary, and still largely inaccessible. On Google Maps, you can find the spring, but what you cannot find is any indication that beneath its waters are human bones older than any other confirmed human remains in Florida. If you are enjoying this, go ahead and hit that like button. We are about to get into some places that will genuinely surprise you. Number 6. Xanadu, home of the future, Kissimmee, Osceola County. In 1983, a structure appeared on US 192 in Kissimmee that looked less like a building than like a cluster of white foam bubbles that had hardened overnight on a vacant lot. It was Xanadu, billed as the home of the future, and it was built using a construction method called polyurethane foam inflation. Workers inflated giant balloons, sprayed them with expanding foam insulation, let it harden, and then deflated the balloons to reveal the rooms inside. The result was a series of rounded white pods connected by tunnels, containing a fully computerized smart home decades before smart homes existed. Visitors paid to walk through and see voice-activated appliances, computerized climate control, and a home computer system that the promotional materials promised would manage every aspect of domestic life. It was genuinely visionary in its technology, and genuinely bizarre in its appearance, and it drew curious visitors off the tourist corridor for nearly 2 decades. The park closed in 1996. The foam structure was left in place, deteriorating slowly, growing mold, and collapsing inward over the following decade. It sat on US 192, visibly decaying, for years before it was finally demolished in 2005. On Google Maps, you see a commercial lot on the tourist corridor west of Disney. There is no indication that the future was once on display here, and that it looked like a pile of melting marshmallows. Number 5. Splendid China, Kissimmee, Osceola County. Splendid China opened in 1993 on a 76-acre site in Kissimmee, just a few miles from Walt Disney World, and it was one of the most ambitious cultural theme parks ever built in Florida. It was a Chinese government-backed attraction that featured over 100 scale replicas of China's greatest landmarks. The Great Wall stretched for half a mile. The Forbidden City occupied a full acre. The terracotta warriors stood in formation in their own pavilion. There were acrobatic performances, traditional dance shows, and restaurants serving regional Chinese cuisine. The park cost over $100 million to build and was genuinely spectacular in its execution. It was also immediately controversial. Protests began before the park opened, organized by Tibetan American groups and human rights organizations, who objected to the Chinese government's involvement and to the park's presentation of Tibet and Taiwan as unambiguously Chinese territory. The protests continued throughout the park's operation, sometimes drawing hundreds of demonstrators to the entrance. Attendance never reached projections. The park closed in 2003, and the site was left largely intact for years. The replicas standing in an overgrown landscape, the Great Wall slowly being consumed by Florida vegetation. The site was eventually cleared and redeveloped. On Google Maps, you see a residential development west of Disney. A half-mile replica of the Great Wall of China stood here, and the ground has swallowed it completely. Number 4, Playland Park, San Remo, Sarasota County. Some of the most heartbreaking abandoned parks in Florida are not the ones that closed because of hurricanes or Disney or government action. Some of them closed because the families that built them simply ran out of road. Playland Park opened in the 1940s on the Tamiami Trail south of Sarasota, built by a local family who cleared the land themselves and constructed the rides over several years. At its height in the 1950s and early 1960s, it was a genuine regional institution. A Ferris wheel, a carousel, a small roller coaster, a funhouse, a miniature train, and a swimming area that served the families of Sarasota and Charlotte counties who could not afford the newer, larger parks to the north. The park operated for decades on the economics of a family business. Tight margins, reinvestment of every season's revenue into maintenance, and a customer base that returned year after year because this was their park, built by their neighbors, on land that had been cleared by hand. It closed in the 1970s as the economics of small regional parks became untenable. The rides were sold off or scrapped. The land reverted to vegetation. On Google Maps, you see a stretch of the Tamiami Trail, where the palm trees have grown back so completely that there is no visible evidence of anything beneath them. A family built this place with their hands, and the Florida landscape took it back in a single generation. Number 3, Six Gun Territory, Silver Springs, Marion County. In the early 1960s, the Western theme park was one of the dominant formats in American regional entertainment, a genre that traded on the mythology of the frontier, the gunfight, and the cowboy in an era when television westerns were the most watched programs in the country. Six Gun Territory opened in 1963, adjacent to the Silver Springs nature attraction in Marion County, in the heart of Florida's interior. It had a full western town with a main street, a saloon, a marshal's office, a stagecoach, daily gunfight performances, a steam train that circled the property, and a sky ride that gave visitors an aerial view of the surrounding forest. At its peak in the late 1960s, Six Gun Territory was drawing hundreds of thousands of visitors a year and was considered one of the premier regional attractions in the Southeast. Then the Western fell out of cultural fashion. Disney reorganized Florida tourism around a different mythology entirely, and the economics of a single-theme regional park became impossible to sustain. Six Gun Territory closed in 1984. The structures were demolished. The site was absorbed into the Silver Springs State Park system over the following decades. On Google Maps, you see forest. The steam train's circular track is underneath the undergrowth, and the gunfighters' boots have been rotting in the soil for 40 years. Number 2, the conch train and the Old Town Trolley. No, let us do this properly. Number 2, Walt Disney World's Discovery Island, Bay Lake, Orange County. There is an island in the middle of Bay Lake at Walt Disney World that has been locked and decaying for over 25 years. Disney opened Discovery Island in 1974 as a zoological attraction, 11 acres of natural habitat on a lake island, home to over 130 species of birds and animals, including rare and endangered species. Guests arrived by boat from the Magic Kingdom dock, walked through aviaries and along nature trails, and encountered animals in settings that felt genuinely wild by the standards of a theme park. The island won awards from the American Zoo and Aquarium Association. It was considered one of the most thoughtfully designed nature attractions in Florida. Disney closed Discovery Island in 1999 when Animal Kingdom opened and made the island's zoological function redundant. The animals were relocated. The island was locked, and it has remained locked ever since. The aviaries deteriorating, the animal enclosures collapsing into vegetation, the dock rotting at the waterline, the entire island visible from the contemporary resort hotels on the lakeshore, and from the boats that pass it every day. In 2009, an urban explorer named Richard Machine accessed the island illegally and documented what he found. Decaying buildings, old park maps still mounted on rotting signposts, animal feed still in storage containers, and the bones of birds that had died in their enclosures after the island was abandoned. Disney security removed him and pressed trespassing charges. The island is still there. You can see it from the Seven Seas Lagoon ferry. On Google Maps, you can see the island's outline in Bay Lake. What you cannot see is that inside the tree line, Walt Disney's abandoned zoo is collapsing into the Florida heat, and Disney has offered no explanation for why it has been left this way for a quarter of a century. Number 1. Gooding's Pleasure Island, Kissimmee, Osceola County. Here is what most people do not understand about the geography of tourism failure in Florida. The places that disappear most completely are not the ones that burned or flooded or were demolished in a single dramatic event. The places that disappear most completely are the ones that were simply outcompeted, economically starved, and then quietly absorbed by the expansion of the thing that killed them. Gooding's Pleasure Island opened in 1967 on US 192 in Kissimmee, 4 years before Walt Disney World opened 6 miles away. It was a full-scale amusement park with a Ferris wheel, bumper cars, a haunted house, a water ride, a miniature golf course, a petting zoo, and an alligator wrestling show. It served the families who were already coming to the Kissimmee corridor before Disney existed. The Floridians and the Southerners and the families who drove down US 192, because it was the road that led to the orange groves and the roadside Florida that existed before the theme park era. When Disney opened in 1971, Pleasure Island did not close immediately. It tried to survive in Disney's orbit, marketing itself as the affordable alternative, the local option, the place you went on the day you were not going to the Magic Kingdom. It survived through the 1970s on those terms. It closed in the early 1980s, and the site was redeveloped into a shopping and entertainment complex that Disney itself later purchased and rebranded. The original Pleasure Island that Gooding built, the Ferris wheel, the alligator wrestlers, the families who came before the mouse arrived, is not only gone from the landscape, it is gone from the name. Disney took the name Pleasure Island for its own entertainment district, operated it for decades, and then closed that too. On Google Maps, you see the Disney Springs complex. There is no marker for the park that stood here before Disney. No acknowledgement that a family-built Florida attraction was here first, and no indication that the name on the map once belonged to someone else entirely. Here is what these 10 places have in common, and it is not what most people assume. They did not disappear because they were bad, or because the people who built them made mistakes, or because Florida's landscape is uniquely hostile to human construction. They disappeared because they were built in the path of something larger than themselves. A hurricane, a corporation, a government reservoir, a cultural shift that happened faster than any regional park could adapt to. The Florida that existed before 1971 was a different state, with a different economy and a different relationship to entertainment and landscape. Walt Disney World did not just open a theme park. It reorganized the entire state's tourism geography around a single gravitational center, and everything that had existed in the old Florida, the roadside attractions, the family parks, the western towns, the circus grounds, was either absorbed into the new orbit or left to deteriorate outside it. The parks on this list are the ones that were left outside, and the landscape has been growing over them ever since. The palmetto and the pine and the Florida scrub moving back across the foundations, the parking lots cracking open, the ticket booths tilting, the Ferris wheel footings rusting under the soil. The state looks like a continuous present. It is not. It is a palimpsest of everything that was built here and abandoned here and forgotten here. And the ordinary surface of strip malls and resort corridors and state highways conceals an extraordinary depth of lost places that the maps have chosen not to show you. They are there. They have always been there. You have driven past them without knowing it. Thank you for watching. If this one changed how you see the Florida you think you know, share it with someone who needs to see it. Drop a comment and tell us which of these places surprised you most. We will see you in the next one.